Yeah, we're back tonight. We're going to be talking about some more Witcher. Tonight we're going to be going over the Game Master Guide in the Witcher RPG. There's really not anything at all as far as like spoilers go. I've really tried to leave out anything that might be considered spoilerish. But if you're one of those people that just refuse to read anything of the GM section of a book because you're worried it might spoil you, then go ahead and turn off the stream and don't watch this video. It might not be for you. But I don't think there's anything spoiler really in here, so I think you're going to be safe. So like I do with every chapter, I read this kind of bold first section over here just to kind of give you a flavor about how they started off. As the GM or game master, you are the most important part of the game. Hey, without you, there truly is no game. But don't let this power go to your head. It's important to always remember that while the GM wields inequitable power within their game, they are there to serve a purpose. As a GM, you apply your godlike power to provide a fun and exciting story for you and your players. In this section, we're going to explain what a GM does and give you some guidelines for GMing as well. And so I think that's cool. It just starts us off and says, hey, yes, you kind of are a god in this, but the main purpose of all this is to have fun for you and for the players, okay? So what GM does is they're basically the storyteller. They're the god beyond the gods is how they describe it. They plan the adventures, the plot twist, the subplots, all these things that the characters are going to either chase or ignore. A GM plays every character that is not the players. So the players have their own little character that they build and they make, but the GM is going to play the other characters, the innkeeper or the monsters or the merchants or any other NPC or non-playable character. Generally, the GM is going to play that. The better that you know the players, the better you can keep them entertained and making the game enjoyable to that person. An entertained player is a happy player. Bored players or players that feel cheated in some way, they become a pain to run in the game. Like they may unconsciously try to derail the campaign or try to mess up the game in some way just to have something interesting to do. Bottom line is keep your players happy. This doesn't mean necessarily, give them everything that they want. You should make sure that every victory that they get, that they've worked for. So it's satisfying to them to actually win something. Players are not the enemy. It's not your goal to kill the party. It's your goal to create threats that could kill the players, but it won't necessarily kill them. Engineer your scenarios with the appropriate amount of danger for your specific players. Big problem that new GMs do is they create these what's called an invisible wall when their players, attempt to go off track of what the GM had planned for them. So maybe the GM needs them to go over here to this town and they're chasing, a horse off into the woods or whatever they're wanting to do. New GMs will often do this, create this invisible wall for them. No matter what the players try to do, the GM basically blocks them and they put more and more obstacles in front of them, trying to trap the players into doing what the GM wants. If you do this, it's a big mistake. And if you continue to make these invisible walls and trying to trap players into doing what you want versus what they want, then the players will start to fight back with you and get listless. And some might even get so upset that they quit the game. They're just like, screw it, I'm out. There's better ways to keep your party involved in your plans than just putting up these invisible walls. You have to be creative with this. You're the GM. You control everything in the game except the players. And you shouldn't try to. If they want to go somewhere or do something that is not in line with your campaign, let them. You can always circle back, after they're done, chasing that horse off into the field. You can always circle back later and get them back on track. And it actually gives us some nice techniques on how to do that right here in the book. And some of these were very handy. Like it says, and you're trying to get them back on track. You can talk about maybe this employer, the person that hired them, is now approached them and said, hey, you guys, what about this thing I hired you to do? You need to get over here and do this. And if the players still disagree, maybe the employer, threatens them with force or something like that. Maybe they end up killing the employer, but they still go, well, maybe we can go and take this for ourselves. Who knows? You can tie it to their life path. Maybe players had an enemy from a long time ago. You can tie to this specific task and tie it into the plot. Did somebody have a lover that went missing a few years ago? Guess where they are now? They're right on where I want, as a GM, where I want them to go. It gives them some type of incentive to finish that mission. And I thought this one was really cool, is little hints. I wouldn't have thought about this. Interestingly enough, downplaying a mystery may get your players more interested. Put your players in a situation with a lot of big things and drop in one tiny little clue to your mystery. Nothing huge. Maybe an open door in a room or a loose floorboard. But make a point of mentioning it. In many cases, your players will go straight to it. Hey, you wouldn't mention it if it wasn't important. Obviously, the other things are just distractions. And so making those little small things are usually like a big signal. And I would have never thought about that. And then they talk about what they call beat charts. And what this is it's a good format to plan out your story before the game, and they call them beats or beat charts, B-E-A-T. It helps you kind of get everything in mind and allows like flexibility to move things around in different order depending on which way characters take off in, okay? Beats are broken down into 4 parts. So, and these are kind of like story structures that you can use when you're building your story. The hook, which is the moment that draws the players into the story, the development, the cliffhanger, and then finally the climax. You put them on note cards or whatever, and you break them up into the hook, the development, the cliffhanger, and the climax, and you can kind of rearrange these things, and this will help you build your story. And it gives us kind of what these things are. Like the development is the moment when your players realize or learn or figure out some special clue or something that progresses the story. You know, a cliffhanger is like the dramatic action-packed moment in the story where players are fighting or are chasing or doing something active. And then the climax is, the story, like the boss fight or whatever it may be, the epic, final ending where the story reaches its final point and everything, kind of starts wrapping up and coming to an end. They give us a nice little example here. And it says the game begins with a hook. Gwen, who is a bard from wherever, wakes up to fire and screaming. So that would be her hook. Her hometown is being raided. So she's waking up and her hometown's being raided and it's on fire. As she runs out, she encounters the development. So the development is she sees the head of these countrymen, a tall man with long black hair and elegant black and gold armor. Okay, so the development is that she sees the head of these invaders. Then a cliffhanger comes. She's spotted by the Nilfgaardians. With few weapons and light armor, she can't beat 5 battle-primed Nilfgaardians in full plate with heavy weapons. It would do her best to run and plot her revenge. So that would be the cliffhanger, okay? And it kind of keeps going through these as, hook, development, cliffhanger, until you eventually reach the boss fight or whatever that climax would be, and that would end up being pretty much your boss thing. There are a few things to keep in mind to get your players in the right mood. The Witcher is not epic fantasy, okay? It's not the Lord of the Rings. It's not Dungeons and Dragons. The main plot is they're never these epic heroes. The players aren't going to be saving the world or slaying evil, a huge batch of evil armies. They're not uniting the world under some type of one magical force or something like that. No, plot lines here are a lot smaller and more of a personal nature. Maybe someone you love has been kidnapped or killed and you're rescuing them or avenging their death. Maybe an army attacked your small little village and you're banding together with these other villagers to assassinate the general that gave the order. Okay, so those would be the types of things that you can expect to play in The Witcher. The monsters aren't the only evil in the game. So it tells you, at least with monsters, you know where you stand. Okay, the monsters hate you, you hate them. That's easy enough. But the real threat comes from the people. And it tells you that just because you're in a city with 3 feet thick walls, guarded by archers, it doesn't mean that you're safe. In almost every place, in every city, every town, there are people there that wouldn't hesitate to stick a knife in your back for a little bit of coin or some revenge or something you've done, or just because they don't like you. Nothing is ever as it seems in The Witcher either. The stories rarely are as simple as they first appear. Most of the time, you should get about halfway through the story thinking one thing, and then like a plot twist occurs and you find out it's something completely different. Players are going to go in with one concept, one idea of what they're doing, and then leave with some completely other idea, leaving them always questioning, like, am I on the right side here? You're thinking, okay, I'm going to be out here fighting these bandits that are terrorizing the city, then come to find out the bandits are actually the good guys and the people in the city are the bad guys or something like that. It talks about the encounters. So when you're setting up your enemy encounters as a GM in The Witcher, there's a formula that they give you, kind of acts like a good starting point as far as the number and the difficulty of the monsters to unleash on your players, especially when they're first starting out. You're going to take the number of players plus 2, and that's going to give you the number of monsters. And so let's just say it was me and Jay playing, and Scott was GMing. 2 of us playing plus 2 is 4, and that would be the number of monsters that we would face. They say that this is a really good starting point for your players, and at least until they get stronger. And it says that eventually the players are going to they're going to receive these awesome relic weapons and all this cool stuff, and they're going to be throwing crazy amounts of dice out on the floor, and they're going to have these awesome critical abilities, and they're going to be able to one-shot monsters. Okay, these small ones at least. And it says, like, at that point, yeah, you raise the number per person and your players are going to love it. And it says there's nothing quite as epic or as badass as, 2 or 3 heroes taking down 20 of these small little monster guys. Just tons of fun for everybody. They break down the enemies into 3 categories, which are easy, medium, and hard. Then there's a little bit more nuance they break down past that, which is simple, complex, and difficult. So they have easy, medium, and hard. And then they have, in easy, you have simple easy, complex easy, and difficult easy. Then medium, you have simple medium, complex medium, and difficult medium, and so on. And so you can get really, you can fine tune the difficulty of your monsters very well suited to the party that you're playing. And it tells you a good rule of thumb is for every medium monster that you put in there, take out 3 easy monsters. And it says, unless your players are totally badass, then don't put a hard monster in there with any other monsters. Just leave them by themselves. We've kind of set up our encounters and things now with our numbers of monsters, but we have to get some rewards for our players, right? What are they fighting for? Like, where's the loot, man? Show me the money. Show me the loot, right? And that's what The Witcher is really about. It's really about the loot. They're rich people that are super rich, and then the poor people are very poor. There's not anything really in between. The continent is at war. And so that makes items very valuable and hard to come by because almost everything is being used in these wars everywhere. And it says even money, currency, which they call crowns, is very hard to come by, and everything is just super expensive. But you might loot an entire group of bandits and only come out with like 70 crowns to split amongst your group. If you take the cheapest longsword that's available, it's going to cost you 160 crowns. Crowns are really hard to find in the game and not common. And so the majority of the rewards are going to come from other types of loot. And they talk about this. They talk about the magic items and relics that are incredibly powerful in The Witcher. Also, they should be uncommon. And when you're doling these out, you want to do them, slowly over a long matter of time because they are super powerful and they kind of stack. Another good thing that you can find when you're killing bandits or just as loot or you're killing things is recipes. And we talked about this a little bit in the crafting and alchemy section where they need like formulas and diagrams to craft things. And something I didn't think about before was like interesting items, like personal items. When you're looting a body, you're going to find like personal items on that thing that's going to add flavor and tell a story, about the person that's carrying them and the world that they live in as well. A GM, that's kind of rolling on what this guy has or whatever, throw in some personal items in there but it's just going to add flavor to your NPCs. But when you kill monsters, because that's going to happen, the monsters are going to have what's called monster bits and twine is what they call it. These monsters are made up of this stuff that can be used to make other stuff like, bombs and traps and potions and all types of stuff. Make sure that you harvest that material and keep it because it's worth something. You can make stuff out of it. You can sell it to other people. So that yucky pile of goo, yeah, it's worth taking the time to go ahead and scoop that up because almost every monster's used to make other stuff. They have added some tools here to help you kind of dole out the rewards based upon, what type of scenario that you just fought. So whether it be like a single monster that you just fought or a den of monsters or, one intelligent monster or humans or non-humans, each group has its own kind of guidelines for loot. They even have like a random possessions chart over here that you can roll on to see what might be found in them. Like you might find a sketch of a person or some fish bones or, a list of people or something like that. If you were to go loot a intelligent monster, it's going to tell you, besides the usual monster bits, it's good to put a few trinkets and favorite objects of the monster on or around it. For most monsters, though, there won't be many. And it says to roll a 1d6 to see how many items the monster owns, then roll on this random possessions table to see what they are. Even intelligent monsters don't usually carry crowns, armor, or weapons. They might have diagrams. And it has some tips in there on how to handle a min-maxer. If you run into that, it talks about a min-maxer as being a player who spends hours or even days reading through every bit of source material, every rule, and online guide to create an ultimate character, often using exploits or loopholes in the system to achieve this. It just doesn't seem like much fun to me. I mean, I understand that's what the game is kind of all about, getting badass, but like finding loopholes, that's just too much work, dude. Just chill. Enjoy the game. Then they start talking about making good NPCs. They give us this nice little chart here to do that, and you can roll it up very quickly. When you use this little chart here, it'll give them somewhat of a backstory that you can do quickly, or you can do it up beforehand. So you can roll, a 1d10, and it'll tell you their race. So if you roll a 4, the race is human, the gender is female, they're a teen, and their personality is they're headstrong. And then you're going to roll another dice on their background. So let's say we rolled a 4 again. Then their history is they think they have magic. Their standing is poor. Their romance is they're uninterested in love. And their secret is that they're a Secret Service agent. Okay, so there you go. There's an awesome backstory, and I just rolled the dice twice. I kind of want to just sleep on this for a night or two and kind of digest everything that I've gone through the past 2 weeks that it's taken me to go through this deep dive of this RPG. Kind of gather my thoughts, maybe put together some final thoughts on it, and then maybe roll up a final report card like I've done with the other ones. If you have any questions about this game, just feel free to ask, in the chat, or throw it down in the comments if you're watching this later, and I'll do my best to try to answer it. That's about it for me tonight, and we will see you all on Monday. Good night.